Welcome to Ben Fly's RC. It's raining outside, horrible day, and it is the perfect day for sitting at home and watching TV doing nothing. But I've left my wife downstairs on the sofa on her own, and I've come upstairs to fly toy helicopters on my computer, because that's what we do here. It's season 1, episode 2 of Level Up Your 3D Flying, and we are going to be looking today at loops, tick-tocks, and Cuban 8s. And these are core maneuvers to 3D flying, just as episode 1 was. And at the end of this episode and episode 3, you're pretty much going to have done all of the core control skills that are involved in every single part of 3D flying. So actually, if you can nail everything in this season, you basically can already do everything. It's just learning the muscle memory for these more complex maneuvers, but you already have the control. So season 2 will start doing pirouetting things, but if you actually think about it, I mean, I see pirouetting as its own orientation, it's kind of unique, but at any point, if you stop the tail, you're basically just rolling or flipping or doing a bit of both. So the control of it and being able to recognize the position of the helicopter is the same that we're going to do in all of these maneuvers. So being good at this is just going to make you a better pilot, and we can all do more of it, as I keep stressing. So with that in mind, let's start looking at these maneuvers. Okay, so we're on Heli, my trusted simulator, and we're going to have a look at loops first. I want you to pay attention to how simple my inputs are. I'm literally going to set a small amount of elevator, and then I'm going to fly it purely on collective. The elevator stays constant throughout the whole maneuver. I just add a bit of collective at the beginning to give it some energy, carry it over the top, and then as we pass over the top, we'll slowly reduce the collective a little bit so we don't pull the thing into the ground, and then we'll just let it fall back down the other side with a fairly neutral collective, and then we'll just manage that collective to try and exit roughly at the same height that we entered. As I say, big and controlled. We want to fly the maneuver, we don't just want to shove inputs in and then hope that it works. So we're going to really work on feeling out how the helicopter flies through the air. So we'll start this way. We're going to pitch up, add collective, reducing a little bit of collective over the top, letting it fall, and then slowly feeding collective back in to exit roughly at the height that we came in. Speed then stays fairly constant throughout, and that's all just done through the management of the collective. So if we do it again, we're going to pitch up, reducing a little bit of collective over the top, and then slowly feeding collective back in at the bottom. Now, there's so many variations. If I use more elevator and a little bit less collective, we'll have a similar speed, but a much tighter loop. So I can do it like this. I'm reducing the collective over the top and adding it back in. It's the same principle. I just had a little bit more rotation on the elevator, and therefore the loop was tighter. And by not using too much collective, I still end up with a similar speed of loop, and it's still fairly controlled. On the other hand, you could do one like that, but with also a fair amount of collective. If I hold quite a lot of elevator, quite a lot of collective, then we're going to get quite a fast loop, like that. So play with it, there's so many different varieties. You could just leave the collective absolutely pinned and it will be very aggressive, but the model is stalled all the way throughout. It's very hard to manage the exit height, and it's just generally not really that nice because you're really overflying the model, and although there is a place for it, sort of when you're doing corkscrews and stuff like that, you are keeping a fairly constant collective in because you almost want to be aggressive with the model. So it's worth feeling it, but if we're talking about flying and controlling the model, it's much nicer to feel a little bit of collective management through it and manage the model through the maneuver. So that's one direction of loops. In all loops, it's also worth saying that your roll is obviously going to dictate where the helicopter goes. So if you come into your loop and you already have a little bit of roll input in and you don't have a level disc, it's going to head off in that direction. So if we're rolled this way and we start to loop, then we end up with this corkscrewed loop. It's with that you're going to make very subtle corrections to keep yourself tracking the line that you're tracking. So ideally, you're just keeping this disc completely level. But if you notice it going off there, then you just slowly add a little bit of left aileron in, and you're just making tiny, tiny adjustments to your aileron. You can barely see it. So you're just going to have to feel this, because the inputs that I would make are like millimeters of disc angle to make sure the helicopter keeps tracking straight. But in order to have control of the loop, you are having to make very subtle management of the aileron in order for it to continue tracking in the straight line. Right, With that in mind, we can start doing backwards loops. It's exactly the same, you're just using forward elevator now, so we come past the centre line, we pitch up, we reduce a little bit of collective over the top, we start catching it with the collective on the bottom, and we exit at the same height that we came in. Always worth doing things both ways. So we try it from this direction, and it's the same principle. We're adding a little bit of collective, reducing collective over the top, adding collective back in on the bottom, and exiting at the same height that we came in. So, backwards, forwards, you can do it upside down, so you enter upside down, it's just negative collective pitch now to get it going, reducing the collective over the top, slowly adding it back in. As you can see, when I'm doing them on a fly here, I am making slight adjustments to the elevator, more because I've rushed that. So that's why I'm saying if you've nailed it, you shouldn't need to do it. But the more you do this, the more you will feel out that relationship between collective and elevator. And with that, you're going to be able to manage exactly the shape, size, and speed of your loops. And you should be able to be asked, I want to fly a tight, fast loop. And you just go out and you immediately deliver the much tighter, faster loop, still exiting and entering at the same height. Or if you wanted to do a huge one, you're going to come in with very little elevator, loads of collective pitch, and just carry it, slowly reducing a little bit collective and carrying it back out again. But you see, you're really flying the helicopter all the way through all of these maneuvers. It's not muscle memory. Okay, you can also try doing your loops in different orientations. So maybe you want to fly away from yourself and then do a loop here, reducing collective over the top, adding a little bit of collective in at the bottom, maybe come back towards yourself, starting a loop in this direction, reducing a little bit, adding it back in. Ideally, you'll be able to do loops, forwards, backwards, inverted. You can do backwards inverted, again starting just doing it up and down the flight line like this. But eventually we want to get to a point that we're going to do them in every single position in the sky. And as I say, that is core to so many things, and seeing the helicopter in these positions is going to make everything else so much easier for you as you move on. So play with it, do it in all different orientations, all different lines, maybe fly a box, fly out this way, turn the corner, and then start your loop. When you complete the loop, finish the leg a little bit, make a turn, fly a straight leg this way, begin your loop on the center line, trying to make all your loops roughly the same size, turning the corner, flying a straight leg this way. So again, we can do this, and we can do it also backwards, and controlling the model through something like this is quite difficult. So practicing these types of things is going to make you so much better at being able to fly other things. And when we get into pirouetting and pirouetting loops and pirouetting globes and all these more complicated maneuvers, having this core skill is going to save you. So it's going to take ages, it's going to take months and months and months to be able to do that in all different orientations. But I advise that continuously through your whole journey, you keep practicing it. I still need to keep practicing it. I still find loads of areas of it really quite uncomfortable and weak. So, all right, that's loops. While we're on loops, we may as well already look at our Cuban 8s. So it's basically going to be two loops that are shaped like a figure 8 with a roll in the middle. So we're going to come down the flight line, we'll just do it forwards. We're going to pitch up into a loop. As we come over the top, reducing to almost zero collective, putting in a roll, coming out this way, pitching back up, coming back over the top, reducing to almost zero collective, half roll, and exit again. That was semi-ugly, but you get the idea. We can enter it from the other direction. We pass the center line, we pitch up into a loop, we reduce the collective over the top, we do half a roll, we come down, we pitch back up, reduce the collective over the top, half a roll, come back out. And again, most of this maneuver is collective management. If I do this, and then when I do my roll, I don't have the collective at zero, have a look what happens to the roll. So I come over the top, maybe I'm holding too much collective in, I roll, it skews towards myself. With that collective held in, with the positive, it just comes at you like this. So you really want to make sure that when you do a roll on a down leg like that, if we come down out the sky like that, when I'm at 0, it rolls really axially. But if you roll with any collective pitch in at all, rolls always start becoming skewed. So it's all about, when you're dropping like that, collective management, getting the feel for 0 collective, which again in so many maneuvers is going to be really, really helpful. A lot of rolling maneuvers require you to find 0 as you do them. So again, it's a fairly simple maneuver, but we can make it more difficult. We can try and do it in some different orientations. So we could try starting off from left to right down the flight line. We are going to come along starting off backwards. And then we'll cross the centre line. We'll pitch up into a loop. Come over the top, reduce the collective, half a roll. Climb back up, over the top, reducing the collective, half a roll, and exiting back out backwards again. Surprisingly quite difficult to do. It pushes you into quite a few different orientations, so controlling the aileron subtly through a manoeuvre like that and not having the model wander in or away from the centre point is quite difficult. We could do it backwards, so we start down the flight line, upside down, cross the centre line, pitching up over the top, centre collective, half roll, that was so ugly, straight over the top, reduce the collective, half a roll, come back out. You see, like, your collective management becomes opposite when you're doing it inverted, and you know, realistically, I never really do this. I should do this, and it proves the point that, like, it pushes your brain into really thinking about what you're doing. You're not using collective management from muscle memory from a maneuver that you've done a million times. You're putting yourself in a slightly different position and controlling the model through a maneuver, and it gets the brain working. Right, last one is one that everyone loves to learn, something a little bit more fun. We're going to have a little look at tick-tocks. Now, at the principle of it, we are literally just going to flip from upright to inverted. So let's just try it initially from tail in. The principle initially, all we're doing is coming from upright tail in, flipping and stopping inverted nose in. So we've learnt flips in episode 1, we're just flipping from one direction to the other. When we're talking about, with the flips, we talked about using our collective to just pop it just a little bit to try and keep it in one space. So that same flip that you're doing, you're just doing it back to here and catching it, doing it to here and catching it. And slowly, we're just not going to go completely flat. We're going to catch it at a little bit of an angle. We're just popping a little bit collective at the end to catch it. And that's all we're doing. We're just rotating the head around this half flip, and slowly we're managing our collective to be able to do it without getting the disc flat. The inputs are the same. This is the same input as this. It's just that the input is happening much faster. Here we're really controlling it, and the reason I show you like this is because we want to be able to control it. I'm not just guessing how much I use here, otherwise it does this. I'm feeling how much collective I actually need in order to keep the model level, and I'm matching the amount of collective on both sides to make sure that it doesn't travel this way. If I use more negative, it's going to go away from myself. If I use more positive, it's going to come towards myself. You can pause. It doesn't have to be continuous to begin with. You can just feel it. But I'm literally pitching forward, pitching backwards with a bit of collective. Pop, 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 pop. But I really, really encourage you to not rush learning this and to feel the feeling of the model flopping back and forth. I'm doing it constantly slightly off to the side just so that you can see a little bit what the head's doing, because if I do it absolutely dead on, you can't really see what the disc is doing. I do think for most people it is easier to learn these initially with the disc facing you like this. In the end, it's much easier to see how you're doing when you start learning them in this direction, because you can see if your tail is going to stay in one space. So like initially I climbed terribly and the helicopter moved around, so you're just really feeling, trying to keep it in one particular spot not climbing, and not descending. Then you can vary the speed, you can do them very, very slowly. Same principle, we started like this. So, as we're practicing this, you will also start noticing that the model drifts. So if we go back to this direction, you might find that it's kind of going off to your left and you feel like you can't control that. The likely reason, if your tail is completely level, is because you will be adding in some small aileron inputs. So there are two methods for moving around tick-tocks, and we're going to talk about that. I think I'll do a whole separate series specifically about tick-tocks in the future. Now, RC Helicopter Richard actually does have some excellent videos about tick-tocks. I also recommend you just watch those if you want to keep improving your tick-tocks. But I want to focus on just keeping it simple to begin with. So although you can move tick-tocks using your ailerons, and that will affect where it goes, and you're effectively slashing, we're not going to talk any more about that because it is quite complicated and confusing to get your head around. And I think to begin with, the best thing that you can do is just get good at the core inputs of the tick-tock, managing the collective and managing the elevator or aileron when we come on to that. And we can move it initially just with some subtle tail inputs. So focus on pure inputs. Focus on just getting your elevator to only be elevator. We don't want to see this sort of aileron coming in while we're doing it. We just want elevator movement while you're doing elevator tick-tocks. And if you want it to travel to the left, all you need to do is add a tiny amount of left tail. So while you're making a tick-tock, you just add a little bit of left tail, and with the nose pointing to the left with the pure elevator, it's going to travel left. So I'll show you that. So we're in a tick-tock, we're learning to manage it, and we feel like we want it to move a little bit to our left. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of left tail, and now we start moving off to our left. Going to add a little bit of right tail, and we're coming back to the right. It doesn't take hardly anything. You can barely see it move, right? I'm literally moving it 5 degrees and it immediately starts traveling. I put it 5 degrees the other way. It takes a second to catch itself. Just wait, be patient, and it'll come back. Obviously, if you want to move it really aggressively, you need a lot. And if you want to stop it from that, you're going to need quite a lot. Just feel it. That, in my head, is the easiest way to move a tick-tock. However, you cannot rely only on it, because in the future, when we look at more complicated tick-tocks, you will need to make corrections using the aileron, because if you're using the tail for something else, if you're in the middle of doing a 12-point tick-tock and you need to make a correction here, you can't put the tail back here again because you were doing 12 points. So there is more to it, but it's getting so advanced, and I just don't think it's necessary to talk about right now. Initially, we're going to use the tail. Right, we've done elevator. Next we'll look at aileron. So again, we'll start in this direction. This way is easier because of the tail thrust. The tail thrust keeps you up a little bit, and we are literally going to roll to an inverted hover here and roll back to upright. And we're just going to manage our collective. To do it, ideally we're not going to travel too far towards or away from ourselves. We're just going to try and keep it roughly in one space. You can feel pushing yourself a little bit towards and away, because in the end that is effectively what a tick-tock is doing, but we just want to control it so we're not flying off over here and it gets all messy. We want to just really feel that collective. Again, exactly the same that we used with elevator, but then slowly we just won't roll it quite as flat, and we'll manage whatever collective it takes. It's feel more than anything. I can't describe to you what collective you need. It depends what head speed you're running. It depends what helicopter you're flying. You have to learn to feel that collective push with pop, 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 pop. And it's all then just timing. And eventually, if you speed it up, it's not changing a huge amount the amount of collective I'm using. I'm just speeding up the collective that I'm inputting. The faster and faster you go, the more and more collective speed you need without... Sorry, that was a very poorly worded thing, my brain's focusing. The faster and faster you go, the quicker and quicker you've got to move that collective. It's got to match perfectly with the disc angle, just as it does when it's slow. You're feeling that, and there's just a completely direct relationship between where the disc goes and where your collective stick goes. Now, it just takes time for your brain to get this timing down. And there's not more I can say on it than that. But I can say that do not practice this thinking, oh, it's not staying in one place, or it's not staying level, so I just need to do more, because the more that you do, the worse it's going to be. the inputs are not that big, the inputs are not that fast. Sometimes people are like, I don't know, they feel like they're just not tick-tocking fast enough, and like, it looks really cool to do really, really fast tick-tocks, and there are some people out there that do them so fast my brain just can't, I don't know how they do it. But we don't all immediately have the ability to just move the stick super fast and keep ourselves coordinated, so you're much better off controlling it nice and slowly. Now then, again, exactly the same with the elevator. With the aileron, we can move it by just adding a bit of tail. So if I just add a tiny bit of left tail here, it's going to start traveling to my left. If I add a tiny bit of right tail, we're going to start traveling to my right. And that's all that it takes. My aileron input is completely pure. I'm trying not to add any elevator at all. I'm just putting aileron in, and then I'm moving it just using the tail. And that's it. That's tick-tocks. Then you can just get comfortable doing them in different positions in the sky. So very common, you see people coming down the flight line like this. You've got a little bit of energy. If anything, it actually floats nicer when you're moving. And we're just going to come all the way down the flight line, doing our tick-tock, and stop. Doing it in the other direction, traveling left to right. And we start doing our tick-tock. It's naturally carrying itself. My nose is a little bit down, so that's helping pulling it along as well. And we stop. And that, again, it's really enough. I'm not going to push like I did with loops to say do it in different orientations. Like, of course, do. Eventually, you're going to want to be able to do your aileron tick-tock this way. You're going to want to be able to do an aileron tick-tock with the nose facing you. You're going to want to be able to do your elevator tick-tock this way. You're going to want to be able to do your elevator tick-tock with the skids facing you. But if you get bored and you want to try it, absolutely, the more time that you spend seeing these different orientations is great. But if you're struggling to do a nice tick-tock this way, it's just a waste of your time to start trying to do one this way, because you are still missing that core control of the collective and the elevator. So changing the orientation is only making it harder for your brain to learn it. Find the orientation that you feel comfortable in and work on absolutely nailing it. As soon as you're pretty close to nailing it, you can start looking at doing them in different orientations. And you'll always find there's one that you don't particularly like, or many that you don't particularly like, and we'll slowly build it up just like that. There's going to be loads of stuff on tick-tocks, because tick-tocks you can do so many things. We'll start looking also at nose down tick-tocks. Again, it's exactly the same inputs, so maybe you find it easier. Fine, learn this first. It doesn't really matter. I find that most people find tail down easier. So that's why I've encouraged that we'll just learn the tail and the aileron to start with, but we definitely need to start looking at doing them in all different directions, doing it with your nose off to the left, where you're working against the tail thrust here. All the same principle, but let's get that core control nailed. And in other episodes, we're going to look more at how we control tick-tocks. In the end, hopefully we're going to be able to start doing 12-point tick-tocks and moving it like that. And I'm going to get really annoying with you, because if we're going to do it with one tail direction, then we want to be able to do it with the other tail direction, which, to be honest, I'm not that good at. So, you know, I need to learn my own lesson, but we do need to do that if we want to become fully the best pilots that we can be. But this is going to be in, who knows, season 4. I hope that you enjoyed this episode too. There's so much in this that will take so long to nail that in a way it just feels a bit frustrating, and I get that, because you want to do something that you feel like looks cooler, and I still say absolutely, as soon as you're sick of it, please do something else. Don't get yourself so down that you're not improving at this stuff that you don't enjoy flying. You have to enjoy it, otherwise you're not going to progress at all. But if you can, dedicate yourself just like 20 minutes of practice time to whichever parts of episode 1 and episode 2 you find difficult, and absolutely 101 where we've done the hovering orientation practice. And in a few months, it's going to feel like it was ages ago that you couldn't do a loop in this particular direction, because now it seems really easy. Stick with it. I promise you it's going to get easier. Subscribe for more episodes. They're coming soon.